Sea beasts that managed to destroy a World War I submarine, monstrous creatures capable of terrorizing entire villages, and a chilling case in which only one survivor was left to tell what happened. What you're about to see belongs to the archives of the horror of the sea, and if you feel ready to face them, then make yourself comfortable, because today you'll know some mysterious attacks that occurred in the ocean. Number 4. A whale in distress. When it comes to chilling attacks, the ocean is one of the main scenarios of fierce battles and bloody duels that end with only one victory. Sometimes, however, even the most fearsome and powerful creatures of the seas is overcome by the unknown. At least this is a conclusion we can draw from the story told by local fishermen off the coast of Cape São Roque, Brazil. That July 1875, the crew of the ship Pauline was surprised by a scene out of some sailor's fantasy. At a safe distance, the crew saw a huge whale at least 10 meters in length. Its attitude was desperate, as it writhed furiously in the sea with no apparent real explanation in the background. However, when the younger members of the crew sharpened their eyesight, they managed to understand what was happening. The whale was being attacked by a creature that none of them could describe without their voices trembling. According to the surviving account of this disturbing encounter, the whale was imprisoned by the long body of a monstrous sea serpent. The whale was trying to break free from its bonds, but found it impossible. The reptile's thick body was already protruding through the whale's hump and was pulling hard on the cetacean as if trying to pull it down into the depths. For 15 minutes, the crew could do nothing but watch the inexplicable attack. None of them could believe it was real, but it was, and that became completely clear when they finally saw the reptile's enormous head. It was a thick skull similar to that of a dragon. Its grotesque maw revealed a huge row of sharp teeth and a restless tongue that emitted a terrifying sound before returning to the depths and taking the whale with it once and for all. The whale disappeared from the surface, and the sailors stood in silence for 5 long minutes. None of them could believe that they had witnessed the horror of that combat. The snake must have measured, according to their estimates, more than 18 meters in length, and when they understood its dimensions, they all thought the same thing. If that whale had not been there, it would probably have been the crew of the Pauline who were pulled into the depths of the ocean. Number 3. Mystery on the Battlefront. One of the most shocking mysteries of World War I didn't happen on the battlefield, nor was it perpetrated by the hands of any military side, but it was produced by a strange marine creature that hasn't been classified to date. This story takes us back to April 30th, 1918, when the British in charge of the patrol ship Seriopsis crossed a path of an atypical scene. A few meters off the coast of the United Kingdom, the UB-85, a powerful German submarine, had given itself away, and its crew was fleeting to the surface completely unhinged. Terror had driven them mad, and they preferred death to staying in the water. When they were pulled from the sea and interrogated, Gunther Kretsch, the U-boat captain, gave a detailed account of the events, and his words terrified the crew. According to Gunther's account, the submarine was following the route set by the Operation Command. The objective was to monitor the English coast and obtain as much information as possible. However, halfway along the route, a strange jolt destabilized the submarine. When investigating what had happened, the engineers found no anomaly. There was no enemy in any direction, but then, as they tried to find an answer, the creature appeared. It was a huge beast, at least 9 meters long, with huge legs and sharp hooves. Its face was similar to that of a piranha, and its powerful dentition, full of deformed teeth, was the last thing they saw before the real horror began. The monster attacked with all its might. It latched onto the submarine with its huge claws and dented the metal. Each bite threatened to tear the submarine apart, and the crew did the only thing in their power. They climbed to the surface. By then, although the beast was gone, the submarine was irreparably damaged and could no longer sail. Gunther concluded his story, and the English crew couldn't believe what they had just heard, so they sent out a rescue mission and dragged the submarine to the dock. When they examined it, the impossible became real. The submarine was riddled with dents, shredded metal, and huge teeth marks and scratches that could only have been made by a creature like the one described by Captain Gunther. Unfortunately, it was never deciphered what really happened. The creature was never found, and although there were other reports similar to this one, its existence was never proven. However, the existing evidence is still sufficient for most people to accept that on that April afternoon, a beast of the deep intervened in World War I. Number 2. Attack in Mahajanga. When mining engineer George Hyde agreed to travel to Madagascar to survey the area near the village of Mahajanga, he never imagined that he'd be involved in a chilling chase in the heart of Bombataska Bay. However, this is exactly what happened in September 1889, when the man decided to accompany a party of fishermen to hunt what they called the monster of the bay. Hours before setting out on the hunt, Height and his friends heard the terrified cries of the local inhabitants. As they approached the shore, they discovered a frightening scene. A group of fishermen was swimming with all their might toward the shore. With each stroke, they looked back, fearing that something may appear that none of the shore dwellers could understand, but which they sensed might be dangerous. When they finally managed to listen to the fishermen's story, they understood the true implications of the event. The group had been attacked by a strange creature, a giant sea serpent, at least 30 meters long, which had managed to sink their boat to the depths. It sounded far-fetched, but it must have been true. After all, what captain or fishing group would sacrifice their own boat for the sake of a joke or a simple scare? Determined to get to the bottom of the matter, about 5 boats left the harbor and headed into the heart of the bay. Their mission was to try to find the missing ship or some clue that would confirm the veracity of the story. Fortunately, or unfortunately, the group soon found that the story was true. Halfway through the journey, the group caught sight of a dark green shape advancing from the depths. The creature's shadow was as long as the 5 ships combined and was thicker than a barrel of barley. However, that wasn't the creepiest thing. The creature wasn't shy at all, and from one moment to the next, it emerged to the surface. Only then did the fishermen realize what trouble they were in. The beast was just as they had described. It was more than 20 meters long, its mouth was large and toothless, its eyes were red, and it emitted a buzzing sound that made the waters tremble. That was too much. The fishermen immediately turned back and began to run away from the creature. They paddled with all their might, never once looking back and aware that they were about to lose their lives. When they finally reached the shore, they realized that out of the 5 boats, only 3 had survived. Number 1. The McCleary Case. The following case takes us to a case documented by Fate magazine in 1965. Its protagonist is Edward Brian McCleary, the survivor of one of the most disturbing events ever recorded off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. The story begins with Brian and 2 friends. On the morning of March 24, 1962, they had decided to go scuba diving and were already in their raft in the middle of the ocean with all the equipment ready for the task. Once they were ready, they jumped into the water and began to explore the depths of the coast. They could observe marine flora and fauna everywhere. The world was becoming a very different place in the depths, but none of these 3 were prepared for what appeared before their eyes. It all happened fast, perhaps too fast. A strange marine figure began to hover around the divers, although they couldn't fully see it. Its body was surrounded by a strange mist, but from time to time it emerged and showed itself in all its splendor. This was a sea serpent. Not just any sea serpent, but a real monster, an unnatural and grotesque beast over 21 meters long. The creature had a huge head with features similar to a turtle, although the jaw was much more pronounced, and a sharp and dangerous tongue merged from it. The divers immediately understood the danger and began to move away from the creature. Brian swam with all his might to the surface. At no time did he look down nor to the sides. His heart was beating fast, and the adrenaline was forcing him to make the biggest effort he could. Unfortunately, when he managed to get out of the water, he discovered that his raft was in pieces. Pieces of wood were floating around, and gathering his strength, he grabbed onto a piece of wood and began to swim. His mind was solely focused on his own survival, and he stayed that way until he made it to the beach. Days later, investigators tried to reconstruct the events. Indeed, the remains of the raft were found. The bodies of Brian's 2 friends were also found, although neither showed any injury nor wounds. The cause of death had been drowning, although Brian was convinced that the reality was quite different. For a long time, Brian was under investigation by the Florida State Police, but insufficient evidence was ever collected to attribute to him any responsibility for the deaths of his companions. Still, even though Brian was cleared of all charges, images of that tragic incident survived in the back of his mind. Brian never stopped remembering the chilling events of that morning, and he continued to claim the existence of this creepy monster off the Pensacola coast until he died. Events like these aren't isolated cases. The coasts of countless countries have been haunted by creatures that sometimes logic cannot define or explain. There are many stories of disappearances and death around the sea, and if they are as interesting to you as they are to us, then you'd better join us in one of the following videos and let your curiosity be satisfied with the most chilling cases of the ocean.